I'm gonna show him.
I'm gonna tell him how you do what you do.
So this is our greenhouse. We just barely brought out the plants right here on the table. And then that box right there we transplanted and then brought out. This one right here was a fig, but it's really important that if you do have a hot weather plant in medium or cold weather, then you always have to cover it up. This was doing really good until one night we didn't know it was going to freeze and it froze and it wasn't covered. So we're still watering it just in case it will come back from the root. These are a couple of our peas. They're not as big as our other ones yet.
Looks like they really need some water, honey. Especially on the edges.
It's that it gets so hot. That's why they're wilting. It's because it gets too hot in here even with all of them done.
Okay.
I'm not sure what this one is.
Swiss chard.
Okay. And I don't remember what... These two are my granny's and I don't know what one she put in here.
That one is some kind of squash, or it's a cucumber maybe. But she's also got beets in there and some lettuce and some carrots.
Yeah. And this is my big pea one. They're crawling out.
So we need to probably start feeding those to the rabbits, huh?
Yeah. And we have some clover in here, along with some other peas. And comfrey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, comfrey.
And Swiss chard?
Yeah. And we have radishes in here, couple peas, an onion or two, or is it, I think it's onion, and I don't know what the rest of what's in here.
Those are oriental greens. These are kind of like a broccoli. Those could be pulled and we could have those in stir fry.
Okay. And there's the same things in here. And got some more, we have some more radishes in here. Some onion, I think they're dancing onions, or is it walking onions?
Walking onions.
Okay. Walking onions right here. That's stinging nettle.
Which you can eat.
Can you eat that?
Mm-hmm. Looks like we need to be doing a lot more harvesting than we are. There's a lot in here we should probably have for dinner.
Yeah.
So, who is the one that takes care of this greenhouse?
I do.
Huh?
I do.
100%, huh?
Yeah.
You planted it, you harvest it, you water it, you fertilize
Mom
it.
helped me on some of the planting, like on the peas, but
after that, you just kind of took over, huh?
Yeah.
So, do you like gardening so far?
Have I ever not?
Well, this is the first one you've done all by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I like all of these. I still think my very favorite to ever plant is still beans. We don't have any. Well, we might have we have a couple of beans in there.
Ones in the front just came up. Good morning, guys. So I'm standing here in front of our greenhouse and I wanted to kind of walk through my process with the greenhouse this year. Kaya, she's my 11-year-old. She wanted to plant a garden specifically with beans this spring. And we went through the process of explaining what time of year we plant what, that she had to wait a little while to plant something that was a warm season crop. And eventually she was able to plant her beans. She didn't get to harvest beans out of the greenhouse because the process of learning how to garden can be long. And the person who can figure out gardening the first season is a lot better gardener than me. She had full reign in that greenhouse. I would give her the seeds that were appropriate to plant in the season, and then she would plant them and she would water them, and I did not enter the greenhouse at all, except for when we first built the beds. And the reason for that was I wanted her to not have Mom peeking over her shoulder and telling her what to do. I wanted her to make connections on her own. So what happens in summer in a greenhouse is that it gets really, really hot. We have both doors at both ends of the greenhouse open. We have a fan, and in Idaho, we don't have really high temperatures, but we have really good sunlight. And in a greenhouse, it's sunlight that decides the temperature, not necessarily the ambient air temperature outside. So we could be in the 70s outside, and we could be 120 degrees inside the greenhouse if we don't get it vented properly. Once we get up into the 80s and 90s, and we have full sunlight, it really takes a beating. Anything that's inside that greenhouse takes a beating. Now, I realize that a lot of people are going to be frustrated at the way that I use my greenhouse. They're going to say, oh, to have such a big, beautiful, expensive greenhouse and not use it more, why don't you grow more warm weather crops? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? You can fight to a certain extent your climate and your soil and your own energy availability. Or you can do gardening in a way that is easy enough that it's still enjoyable. If you have more to give, if you have a greater need for that particular plant, your circumstances kind of predict what you're going to be able to do as a gardener. For me, I cannot work out in the hot sun very well, almost at all. I have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come out and even video because I can't be out in the hot sun. I have an autoimmune disorder, and I function very well as long as I stay within my parameters of my energy and my environment that I can handle, and as long as I put the greatest value on the things that give me the most bang for my buck. And this greenhouse in the summer does not give me any bang for my buck. It's just a headache. I have to babysit it if I want to really be emotionally attached to what comes out of this greenhouse. In the fall, in the winter, in the early spring, it's a godsend. I love this greenhouse. But in the summer, I'm not willing to fight with it. That's just from a cat. That little hole. From a cat being playful and jumping at the plastic. You can get plastic, little pieces of like duct tape, and you fix those when the plastic is really dry. And this has been there for a long time and it hasn't been any bigger. That's why you need to have really good plastic on your greenhouses, even though it's a little more expensive. I think our greenhouse plastic to get the replacement was, I think, $150 to do the whole thing. Alright, this is the greenhouse, and it looks quite a bit different than it probably should at this point. This is Kaya's greenhouse, and this is the first time she's grown a garden, and I have been telling her to harvest things for rabbits and harvest things for us, and because she's new at it, she just doesn't really know what she's looking for. So what we have here is a lot of things that have gone to seed that should be to the rabbits by now. Alright, so these are super heavy, really huge, and they're planted in a little kiddie swimming pool. So this is a kid's swimming pool. In the bottom I have logs that are about this tall, and I have them all over the bottom of the swimming pool, and then we put on about an inch of rabbit manure, and then over the top of that we put potting soil. There is a hole in the bottom so that as it's being filled with water, it can let the water out so it's not sitting in a bog, but the wood absorbs most of the water and holds it, and the rabbit manure keeps it from being too carbon heavy. It means there's nitrogen in there to eat things up and get things turning into dirt. But this whole thing anything that's flowering needs to be pulled out. All of this stuff just really needs to come out. So you have to have really tough plants in your greenhouse that want certain things at different times of the year. In the summer you need something that is heat tolerant. In the winter you need something that is freezing tolerant. So what we have planted here is some heat tolerant peas, Swiss chard, which is very heat tolerant, squash, and then what I'm going to do now is that it's definitely only going to be warm from here on out with a few chances of frost left until the end of June. But I'm going to put my tomatoes in, my New Zealand spinach, and we'll get it back up in production. I've got nettles out here that I need to come and cut. I need to put on all my protective gear, come out, cut the nettles down, lay them down as a green manure, just clean things up a little bit. And it looks like it's just got out of control just a little bit for Kaya. I think she probably got a little overwhelmed with how much was growing. And so now we need to do a little bit of housekeeping and get things moving a little bit faster to get these new plants in. They're already out here in the greenhouse. They're already acclimated. This is one that the cover got left on too long, and so now she has an unhappy pepper. These are herbs. There's a bunch of tomatoes in here, and then over here we have more tomatoes again. So some in the pots, and in fact that's a melon. So I need to get these in their pots, planted out here in the beds. I already know that I have a lot of fresher vegetables in the rest of the garden that can be given to the rabbits, and we've already probably given them with just this one Chinese cabbage that I pulled out. We've given the mama rabbits as much as they need for the day. So for most of this that's kind of woody, I'm just going to put it in the compost pile to turn into soil, and it's not being wasted. This one is a good one that's not real weedy. I'm going to put it out for the geese to see if they want it. You can see their root systems are really good, really long. They had plenty of friable, open, nice material to be able to get their roots into, and that's why they were able to use their water and their fertilizer so well. So these need to go to rabbits. I'm going to leave a couple of these in because I want them to go to seed and I want to save the seed, but the rest I'm going to pull out. This is the last bed I want to show you. All it is a rectangle of 2x4s, and then inside that we put logs again that were about this tall, and logs stacked all the way along so they look like a raft. And then we put on 1 inch of rabbit manure, and then we put on 2 inches of potting soil and we planted into it. And Kaya has kept this one cleaned out a little bit better. One of the things that will happen that I'm really relieved about is that eventually this wood breaks down and these plants will actually be able to get their roots down into the soil underneath, and that soil underneath will be better than what we started with because of this decomposing wood. But these are good, really good beds. Again, this is Kaya's greenhouse, so I don't come out here and meddle with things, and she's been trying to follow directions, but I think she didn't understand what I was saying when I said if they start to flower we need to give them to the rabbits. So we're not, it doesn't look like we're getting a lot of people food out of this bed right now, but that's okay, she's learning. But the beds themselves are amazing. They're beds that an 11-year-old can take care of and get water into and keep things alive, and that's part of the learning. I pulled out the greens, and now I've got a tomato or two in here. and a melon. You can see I've cut down, we have nettles growing here. So I've got a tomato, and a tomato. I wanted to show you guys what the wood looks like. So there's the bed, and you can see wood right there. And there's wood all the way across, and there's just a little bit of potting soil and manure on the top, so you can see it's not an expensive strategy. So there's a video that my Airbnbers who are staying here with us and helping us on the property made, I think last week, and it's about harvesting onions. And the reason that they're harvesting onions in the middle of July is because the last time I came out here to look at the greenhouse, I discovered that Kaya's interest has waned, and that's okay. She watered for she's been taking care of that greenhouse since April, and it's almost the end of July. So her interest in it waned, which is very normal. One of the reasons I gave her the greenhouse to garden in is because it's not my preferred method to garden in spring and summer. I garden in the greenhouse in the winter, and that's because I don't have to fight the temperatures in the winter as long as I use one of my pallet raised beds. There's bottom heat from the decomposing material in the hotbed, and then there's just the plastic over the greenhouse that holds that heat in a little bit better. We use the greenhouse in the winter as our duck shelter, and that way our ducks lay all season long, all winter long, without any artificial light, because they have that buffer of that plastic during the day that keeps them very nice and warm, and also gives them sunlight for as long as there's sunlight to be had. Since the greenhouse was your garden this year, what were your favorite and least favorite parts of gardening in the greenhouse?
My least favorite was I had to walk out so far and haul the water. My favorite was that it grew the peas really well.
Any tips that you're thinking of putting into play for next year? Are you going to want the greenhouse garden again, or are you going to want a hotbed, or are you going to want to help more with the row garden, or are you going to do exactly the same thing?
I think I'll do exactly the same thing.
Okay, good job. You grew a lot of food in there. We didn't harvest. I think the distance is a really big thing to bring up, because the further your food is from your house, if it's meant for the table for fresh eating, the harder it is to get out and plant and pick it. We had the same amount of food in the backyard, maybe not as much variety in the backyard, but we always picked it from the backyard because it was easier to get to.
Yeah, the only times we really ate the stuff in the greenhouse was when we went out there, and
it was mostly
then
peas.
We just ate all of it.
And you ate the peas mostly.
Yeah.
We didn't eat anything else out there because
there was only one type of pea that we liked, and we would always gobble it up.
The radishes, Jessie liked them. I think she was the only one who liked them though, because they were so spicy.
Yeah. So now you know for next year.
We also had turnips.
variety matters, and time of year matters, and the bed matters. It all matters, and you learn more every year, huh?
Yeah.
Are you glad we did it?
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Yeah, I ate a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal.